My wife cheated on me and now has so many demands and it feels so unfair. I, 30s male, and my wife, 30s female, got married recently. We were together for 6 years before marriage and engaged for 3, delayed the wedding twice because of COVID. Her mental health has always been a struggle, depression, ADHD, anxiety, but during the relationship it feels like it's slowly been getting worse, and COVID was really bad. She really struggled with not seeing people during the height of the pandemic, and anxiety from a family health scare. During this time she lost her job but got a new one quickly after that was remote, but therefore more irregular with hours. I've always tried my best to be supportive and she's said in the past that she felt I was the only person she's ever met who made her feel she could become who she wants to be. But I suppose that stopped being true at some point. A few months after our wedding, she got COVID and also had long COVID symptoms for a while. It was very difficult mentally and physically. I think she was mostly recovered after several months when she got COVID again and long COVID symptoms again. We knew better how to manage it so it improved slightly faster, but stress-wise, it all became too much. After she got COVID the second time, we started being much more careful with our masking. We only ate indoors for important occasions, and wore masks in bars. We sat outside in the winter at any place that still had outdoor seating. But after her second COVID recovery, she spiraled into a depression worse than I had seen before. She decided to take a leave from work. During the depressive episode and leave, I fed her, did all the household chores, and worked full-time. During her leave, she started improving. She attempted to do many things, like take classes, but the only thing that she really did consistently was yoga. Her sleep schedule was really inconsistent from the depression, so she would often struggle to go to sleep, resulting in being up late and then napping, and continuing to cycle with late sleep times. This meant that she would take later yoga classes, after dinner, and then have energy. She would say she's going to go to a bar with friends from the class or that she was going to draw at some bar after, or that she needed to think about therapy, etc. Usually she would say her intention was to be at the bar for an hour or two and then come home, but she would inevitably say just another 2 hours while I think about things and do that again, until bars closed. Then she'd come home, sometimes drunk. During recovery from a depressive episode and long COVID, I thought this was an unhealthy coping mechanism and it made her sleep even worse. It meant she'd sleep through the day and not get vitamin D, and sleep quality is so crucial for mental health as well. I would say my thoughts on this, but she's always been defensive about feedback from me. I've journaled about this many times and talked to her about it, including asking her to talk to her therapist about it. But during our couples therapy sessions we never really got to issues I had with her communication. We only talked about methods I should use to ensure I don't trigger her from past trauma and how we can both de-escalate. Very valuable things, of course. But this time I suppose was too much. During her times out, guys would talk to her. Eventually one wore her down and she made out with him. She gave him her alternate email and they'd meet up to make out, eventually making love. She also met 2 other people who she told she wanted something purely physical with, but she says she never had physical intimacy with them. She would send dirty texts to them and left pleasure to their texts. I discovered this when I picked up her phone to charge it when she was napping. We have each other on Face ID and thumbprint, and when you start charging, the screen lights up and shows past notifications. I saw a weird text, so I opened her phone and looked at it. I didn't think it was suspicious when I clicked on it and had literally zero suspicions until I realized what I was actually reading. I looked at it purely with curiosity because we were so open otherwise. I thought, I was distraught, but I also saw that this guy sent emails to her alternate email that she doesn't keep open by default. I sent myself the emails so she couldn't deny anything later. She woke up from her nap and we talked and cried. I was so broken and numb, but her remorse seemed so complete, and she said that she was dying to be wanted and feel young and alive. She said she never wanted to be with anyone else. She said she's messed up, mentally, and she's so sorry she's destroyed our marriage too. I wanted to work on this, her mental health, and us, and I told her I wanted to be with her. The next day was hard, but we seemed to get through it somehow. Then she had a therapist appointment. We talked about it afterward. Her therapist seemed to tell her she's never done this before, so it isn't who she is. She was feeling trapped and wanted attention. The leave from work and freedom is working for her mental health, which is true. It was a violation of privacy the way I discovered it. And during this conversation, all these things she said very defensively and with an attitude of blaming me for her actions. I was not happy about the perceived lack of guilt. Over the next few days, she seemed to take responsibility and I had hope for our growth from this, but then she wanted to think about what to do about her job after an afternoon yoga class. This was 5 days after I found out. After, she delayed when she'd come home again, and again. I told her to take her time until she told me she'd be home by 2. I said she can't do the exact thing she did when she cheated this soon after cheating. How can she expect me to trust her? She had location sharing on her phone and I went to the bar she was at. I told her this again in person. She said she was staying until 2 and that's how it was. I left, and she did come home later. I don't think she cheated or anything. After couples therapy the day after, she had another therapist appointment a few hours later. After that, she's basically not been home. She has told me semi-loose plans, having dinner with a certain friend, but not more than that. She says she needs space. She'll come home late and sleep on the couch until I wake up, then go sleep in our bed until it's time to leave the house again. Based on our couples therapy session, I think she is going to demand changes from me so she doesn't feel trapped. I don't want her to feel trapped. I want her to be healthy and to have healthy coping mechanisms and to want to be with me. She still texts "I love you" to me, but she hasn't said she loves me in a week. I am so scared she wants to separate more completely, not only for my sake, but hers. She said self-destruction ideation and I just want her to be okay. I think she has projected her parents' relationship onto me and will see anything I do as controlling or annoying at this point. I think her therapist has heard her talk about me this way as well and is encouraging separation. I don't think her therapist is wrong based on what she's heard, but I think it's possible my wife is being selective about what she tells the therapist. For example, she didn't tell the therapist she was cheating on me for the 2 months it was happening. I would guess that she also wasn't telling the therapist how often she was going out alone drinking. At our next couples therapy session, I think I'm going to be told she's moving out, and if I don't want that, I'll be controlling her again. I don't know how it's come to this. When the couples therapist found out, she told me just because she feels trapped does not mean that you are trapping her, but I am scared that my wife, who definitely has felt I walk over her in conversations, is choosing now to put her foot in the sand. It feels like the most unfair time and decision, but I don't want to lose her and start my whole life over. I also don't want to acquiesce to this and have her think she is right to think I want to control her. That would result in a life of her resenting me in her mind. I know I'm not blameless. We got couples therapy before this happened for a reason. I am argumentative and she gets triggered by confrontation from past trauma. We have worked on it a lot and I am doing better, but I'm not perfect. But above all else I want her to be happy and healthy, and I thought she knew that. So how can she think that I want to control her instead of thinking she's coping unhealthily? I don't know how I came across with this text, but I am kind of numb right now writing it. I can't stress enough that I try in every conversation to understand. Even if she feels I'm just trying to win, or if the conversation gets heightened by my tone or her trauma, it's the number one thing we've talked about, and it hurts so much that she really thinks I want to control her, even though what I am proposing, not demanding, is as mild as being at home by midnight on weekdays and trying to sleep well for her mental health. My wife was killed in a tragic accident, then I found out she was cheating. 2 months ago my wife of 10 years tragically passed away in a car accident, hit by a drunk driver in broad daylight. I cried non-stop for 3 days. We were planning on having kids and I had started a good paying job a year earlier, and we just purchased our first home just 2 months before her death. I just couldn't and still can't believe she is really gone from my life. It's like just yesterday everything was heading in the right direction and would soon raise a family. She seemed happy in our marriage and stated how proud of me she was. The following week after the accident I received her phone, which was locked. After a week I found out how to unlock it by an obvious code I didn't think of earlier. I simply just wanted it to keep photos in her memory, photos of us and so forth. But I saw some odd things in her photos. Included photos of her in someone else's house, a house which I had never seen before, taking dirty images. I continued scrolling down and seen the most heart-wrenching thing I ever seen. Which was her with another man. It was nothing intimate, but they were in a place that was obviously his. And just how close they were, I just knew that this was an affair. The guy who my wife had an affair with, showed up at her funeral. I felt like I got stabbed in the gut when I realized I seen him there. I began reading her texts and first I found out that she was on her way back, from his place. 3 hours before the accident she texted him saying, "I'm on my way." I knew that meant he was the last one to see my wife. Not only see her but having an intimate moment with her. Also she would still be here right now if she wasn't seeing him. I feel like I'm going through a death of a loved one and a breakup at the same time. She did this behind my back and will never know that I found out. In a way I feel she got to escape the heartbreak she put me through, although I fully understand death is much worse, and even knowing everything I know, I would never ever wish this or any pain upon her. I found out not only through her texts but her Facebook messages. Something that absolutely enrages me is that she told her closest friend that this guy from work wanted to take her out to dinner. Her friend encouraged her to go out with him. It enrages me because I knew her as well and in person she was always very nice. But my wife was asking her to get confirmation. Had she said no, you are married, do not go out with him, I honestly feel like she wouldn't have done it. But her best friend was like, oh, is he hot? Oh, do it. Go have fun. It's just enraging. This happened 6 months ago when she asked her friend about it. A few days later she talked to her friend about how after dinner she went to his place and made love with him multiple times. When I read that I honestly got physically sick. I honestly started going through a breakdown, vomiting in the toilet then crying on the bathroom floor. I just can't imagine that this stuff actually happened, but it did. How could she do this? But as the days passed and the initial shock began to slow down, I started piecing things together. The funeral I noticed something a little unusual, which was this best friend of hers, talking to one of her coworkers. This was a friend from high school and there was no reason she should have known any of her coworkers. But she was in fact talking to her coworker who she had the affair with. Then she came and talked to me, gave me a hug. The guy who my wife was having an affair with, came and shook my hand. Something about that just makes me feel sick. Like I was being humiliated in a moment of grief. There was him and her best friend who knew about her affair. I couldn't help but wonder, did her coworkers also know? It's been a month and I feel no closer to breaking away from the heartbreak. I miss her, I want her to be alive. If she was, I would probably even want to fix our marriage. But she's not here anymore. I still couldn't bring myself to read all of her text messages with him. There is hundreds and some are very explicit. My blood boils and my heart aches when I open their texts and I get hit with anxiety and an adrenaline rush, palms get sweaty and hands shake. But I feel it's important I knew everything. It just breaks my heart this guy did things with my wife she wouldn't do for me. The thing that blows my mind the most is that there were no warning signs at all, not one. Our marriage was good, she never did anything suspicious, our intimate life went on as normal. Just zero warning signs about it other than the fact she started wearing a little more makeup than usual. Then I blame myself for not catching on. Maybe this all could have been prevented. Maybe I should have done this or that. I am broken and don't see myself ever being happy again. Edit. I have got a response back from her friend, stating that she is deeply sorry for encouraging the behavior and not taking my feelings into account. She never wanted me hurt and yada yada. Honestly, I don't feel any relief from her apologies. About the phone, I cannot bring myself to destroy all the truth. I feel like I must read through the entirety of my wife's texts with this man, or I will forever go crazy wondering what did and didn't occur, how often, and maybe get some answers on if they were lovers. Was it just lust, or what did she plan on doing? Obviously, in this state of trauma, I cannot emotionally handle reading their conversations, but I decided to keep the phone, to read it all and then toss it and move on. Also, for people telling me to piss on her grave, or saying this is karma, please drop it and don't comment. I loved her for over a decade and it's not going away like that. I still love this woman even with the disgusting things she has done. She was still my wife, a daughter and an aunt. She didn't deserve to get hit by some drunk driver and suffer with bleeding in her brain that ultimately caused her death. Please go away, I do not need this, and I am not a sick-minded enough man to have those thoughts. For everyone else, thank you so much.